to stop being your own worst critic. It has often been said that a person can be their own worst critic. There have probably been at least a handful of moments in your life where you found yourself wishing you were smarter, stronger, or more confident than how you perceive yourself at the moment. Listening to that voice in your head can be a strong motivator that can drive you towards bigger and better things. But what if it's not always right? What happens when your inner critic becomes too critical and begins to unfairly pick away at things we have no control over, or tries to find problems where they don't exist in order to make you feel bad? Why do we criticize ourselves so harshly compared to others? And what can we do to prevent this? We have some answers that may help, but first, why not click on that subscribe button and ring the notification bell as well? Now, back to the question at hand. Why is it that the voice in your head criticizes you so harshly, and in such a way that would be shocking if another person said something similar to your face? And, more importantly, what can we do when we realize our inner critic is being too severe in order to get them to stop, or at least lighten up? How can you stop yourself from becoming your own worst enemy? While this might sound like a daunting task, it can potentially get easier to control your own worst criticisms once you understand where they come from and how you can approach them differently. In an article from Psychology Today, Margaret Warenberg writes about the way in which you perceive yourself is often different than the way in which you perceive others, and, most likely, how they perceive you. Because of this skewed point of view, you can often end up having an unfairly negative image of yourself as a result, Warenberg writes. When you look at other people, you can see their qualities through their words and actions without hearing the labels they give themselves. While you may not be able to see yourself so objectively, when your self-image is rooted in shame, you fear being exposed as flawed, insufficient, or just plain bad. In another article for Psychology Today, Jenna E. Pincott discusses how feelings of inadequacy or shame can seemingly override all other emotions, and as an end result, we often end up shaming ourselves before anyone else gets the chance, almost as a way of bracing ourselves when we anticipate external criticism from others. This can sometimes lead to incredibly negative results. However, as the instinctive way in which we shame ourselves, in turn, demotivates us from doing better in the future. Pincott writes, "Shame, sometimes called the master emotion, is the feeling that we're not worthy, competent, or good, that we are, in a sense, rotten at the core. Beating ourselves up is a preemptive gambit to inoculate ourselves from external shaming. Sometimes the message is, shame on you if you don't work really, really hard, or shame on you if you're not tougher, smarter, or better than you were last time. But sometimes the message is, shame on you if you fail, so don't try." This can be incredibly harmful. Seeing how your inner critic offers criticism in ways in which you could have done better, it does not provide opportunities to actually grow as a person and better yourself. Instead, the voice in your head begins to tell you not to bother, to stay where you are because, according to it, you'll most likely fail anyways. What's the point in applying for that new job when they'll probably hire someone that's more skilled than you instead? Why audition for the soccer team when they'll most likely reject you anyways? This way of thinking traps you in a comfort zone where you feel safe but are ultimately unable to move forward. No matter what you do, say, or manage to accomplish, it seems as though it will never feel like it's good enough to satisfy that voice in your head. And as a result, whatever success you do manage to achieve, you'll never feel you earned or is genuine. So how can you avoid selling yourself short and learn to put yourself out there and take chances at success? Well, according to Ethan Koss and Özlem Ayduk of the University of Michigan and the University of California respectively, simply trying to shut out or ignore the criticizing voice in your head probably won't work. Instead, these researchers suggest that the best way to deal with these overly self-critical thoughts and feelings is to approach them using a technique known as self-distancing. With self-distancing, the goal is to examine your inner critic from a detached, outside perspective. In other words, almost by pretending that you're an entirely different person. When you experience a situation in which you feel self-doubt, take a step outside yourself and look at it as if you were observing another person. Avoid first-person pronouns such as I and me. In addition, ask questions such as why you feel this way and why you decided to be so critical of yourself. Instead of thinking, I'm not good enough to apply for this job, pretend you're speaking to another person and ask, why do you feel like you're not good enough? Why do you see yourself as being unqualified or unprepared for the position, when all of the evidence appears to say otherwise? This method of self-distancing allows you to remove yourself from the emotional part of the situation and view the occurrence from all sides, and hopefully with a bit more objective thinking as a result. Of course, everyone experiences these things slightly different, and one coping strategy isn't guaranteed to work for everyone. Fortunately, there are a number of other strategies you can try whenever you notice you might be acting a little too critical of yourself. According to Susanna Nusanen from Happyologist, one way to combat your personal critic is to attempt to counter every negative thing you say about yourself with 3 positive things. Nusanen writes, research has suggested that it takes about 3 positive things to balance out 1 negative thing. So put this into practice when you're feeling too critical. When you find yourself being overly negative towards yourself and your accomplishments, it can be extremely helpful to remind yourself of the aspects of your life that you can feel proud of. By reminding yourself of at least 3 talents, accomplishments, or other positive aspects about your life or identity, you can potentially outnumber and overpower your negative thoughts in the moment, resulting in a more balanced and grounded outlook on your current situation. And finally, one thing to consider when you're being overly critical of yourself is this: at the end of the day, no one is perfect, and people will always have flaws that need to be worked on. Instead of constantly beating yourself up over the past flaws and mistakes, use them as a springboard for potential personal growth. In her book, The Person You Mean to Be, psychologist Dolly Cha suggests that we should reject the idea that we are either good or bad, and instead view ourselves as a work in progress, using a term she calls good-ish. Instead of dwelling on our shortcomings, Cha suggests that we acknowledge them and use them as a means to move forward, with a constant goal of growth and self-improvement. When things don't go our way, or when we find ourselves in unfamiliar or uncomfortable situations, it can become incredibly easy to let thoughts of self-doubt and unfair amounts of self-criticism creep their way into our minds. When this happens, many people have a tendency to override their thoughts with feelings of negativity, drowning out any positive thoughts or aspects they might otherwise have about themselves. When you find yourself being your own worst critic in these situations, it is important to recognize and be aware of this fact. Only then will you be able to take the necessary steps in order to control, or at the very least lessen, this way of thinking, and prevent these thoughts from sabotaging your mind during stressful or uncertain scenarios. Remember that just because there is a voice in your head that's criticizing you, that doesn't mean what it's saying is true. How do you stop yourself from being your own worst critic? If you have thoughts, suggestions, or additions that others might find helpful, please be sure to let us know in the comments section below. Enjoyed this video? Hit the like button and share with your friends. Also, subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.